Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Soundwave Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson Missing, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on a life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings, King David Psalms, The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, Amazon keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Check it out today. Also brought to you by Sensei Swaying Eric Diamond with the latest All of Me, featuring I've got a new Heartache, title track, and more. EricDiamondMusic.com. New music coming soon. Facebook, YouTube, Spotify. Check it out today. We're here with the terrific gentleman who's an author and whose grandfather is a curator, renowned world authority on Native American art. And this gentleman we're going to have on tonight is a proud fifth-generation Colorado native and the grandson of this wonderful grandfather, four-time national TV arts and science and Heartland chapter Emmy winner at KUSA TV in Denver, multimedia journalist and executive producer. And he's got a new book out about a man who revolutionized the way we view Native American art and befriended quite a number of them in a book called Poppy, a novel about Colorado, colorful life. Live, ladies and gentlemen, plus dudes and beautiful somewhere in downtown Denver, Colorado, the outskirts of it. The amazing author whose grandfather is a curator, renowned world authority on Native American art. The book is called Poppy, a novel about colorful life. Ladies and gentlemen, multi-talented Jack Maher. Jack, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, Mike, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on your show. Appreciate the invite.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Jack. You're an author, and your grandfather, who is Eric Douglas, is a curator, renowned world authority on Native American art. And you're a proud fifth-generation Colorado native and grandson of Eric Douglas. You're a four-time national TV arts and science Heartland chapter Emmy Award winner at KSA TV in Denver, multimedia journalist, executive producer. You're also president of the Colorado Officers League. And you also have a new book about a man who revolutionized the way we view Native American art and befriend and champion some of the greatest Native American potters, textile makers, painters, and sand painters. We'll talk about that in Poppy. Before getting all that, Jack, tell us how you first got started.
Well, so in the multimedia world, I mean, I'm a dinosaur. I go back to the era when we were still on film. I was a news guy shooting on 16 millimeter film, and then videotape came in, and that sort of revolutionized things. And I was able to transition into this digital world, this mad digital world that we have. So I learned how to use all kinds of new tools. And of course, all the equipment got smaller and smaller. But most of my career was really in video. And when I transitioned into book writing, I kind of had to unlearn a lot of the TV stuff that I had spent most of my career doing and relearn how to write, because I started as a newspaper columnist and reporter, transitioned into TV news, and then now here I am, a novelist.
How do you like that, going from newspaper to TV to reporter and everything like that? Author is just amazing. It was at one precise moment that simply influenced you, what you do in the rest of your career.
Well, that is a great question. And I am proud to say that it was at George Washington High School in Denver. And that is where my journalism teacher, who is still with us to this day, her name, we called her Mrs. Mack. One day we were up in the newspaper office on the third floor of my high school, and she happened to look outside and she noticed a news crew that was parked at the curb, and they were putting their gear to the back of the vehicle. And she opened the window and she yelled down and said, "Hey, we're a newspaper class up here. Can you guys come up here and talk to us?" They came up and they spent about 20 minutes, a reporter and photographer, talking about their lives and what they did for a living. And I just got hooked, Mike, when I heard how varied their days were, the assignments. It just seemed so exciting and fresh. And so I made a promise to myself as a high school junior, that's what I'm going to do. And one day I was able to work with those two people at the NBC station in Denver.
Oh, my goodness.
Ignited that spark in me. It took me about 10 years. You know how it goes. You go in the small markets and you work your way back to the big ones. But I finally did it, and I was able to tell them both how much they meant to me, as well as my journalism teacher. If she had not opened that window, I never would have taken this path.
and you're afraid you would have just said, "Hey, what are you doing? Get out of here." That's what I was more thinking.
Not at all. Not at all. She was inviting them up, and I'm so glad she did.
Talk about journalism teachers, and we can get to talk about off the air. I grew up in the world of journalism myself, and one of my influential teachers was Mrs. Foy from back in Chicago at high school, encouraged us to write, be everything. But I had a journalism teacher at Harper College, Henry Rupkin. He was big time Chicago reporter. But then the thing he learned about the nuts and bolts, you know how you raise your hand to be polite and everything. If you have a question, well, if you catch your raise hand, he goes, "Oh, go ahead. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just answer." And I would do that. But after a while, I'd go like this, go like that. But he's like, he just taught you everything about the business. And he's just like, get right to the source. And the best thing I learned from him was, if your mother says, "I love you," verify it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. We are so lucky to have people like that in our lives who take the time to really mentor and to inspire. And I, again, don't know where I'd be today if it wasn't for Mrs. Mack. So I'm glad you have someone like that in your life too.
And I think we relate to the classic journalism style and everything else. Who are some of your favorite reporters? Who are some of your favorite TV newscasters or TV producers, directors, or just TV people in general growing up?
Oh, you have to go with the classics. Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite, Mike Wallace, Ted Koppel. I was in radio for a while, as were you, and I will never forget getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go in and do the morning news on an AM station. And one of my jobs was to record Paul Harvey news and comment. And
Oh, yes, I love
yeah,
it. The rest of the story.
that's pretty much it. You give people that name today, and a lot of folks don't really recognize it or remember it. But he had a beautiful writing style that just captured your attention. And in a 15-minute newscast or less, he really there was no actualities. There was just him with his copy, and he was transfixing. He just had that style that made you want to listen to what he had to say. And I would encourage your listeners, if they've never heard of Paul Harvey, Google him up. And there's plenty of clips out there, and just spend a few minutes listening to his audio, and you'll find out what made him so special. So those were some of the formative people nationally. Locally, it was the folks at my station I ended up working at for 34 years, Channel 9. Some of the people that I remember growing up and watching on television ended up being my colleagues, including these two people that came to my high school. And 9 really was the station in Denver. It was very innovative. We had the first helicopter. We had the first Skylink in terms of live technology. And year after year, for as long as I was with them, and even to this day, they keep getting National Press Photographer Association awards and Emmys. It is just really a premier TV station in the United States.
It sounds like it, and one of the best in the business. We encourage everybody to check it out. You mentioned Paul Harvey as well, too. And I don't know if you have a favorite episode, but my favorite Paul Harvey one I really liked was about "If I Were the Devil," and list about, I allow
Yes.
this, I allow that. This is like, he did like what, 1965 or somewhere around there? And it's coming true today. It's like, how did he come up with that
Yeah.
stuff?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I've actually used that in my religious education classes when I teach kids. It's a great little bit to help bring religious ed alive for those kids.
Oh my gosh. And that is something. God bless Paul Harvey on that one. And plus, you also transition nicely into author as well. You've got a really proud grandfather you like to talk about. We'll talk about with Jack Maher in the book Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life. Saying that 10 times fast. But first, you listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson Z has garnered great reviews. An Evil Evan enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Jonah Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for It Goes Missing by Mia Molson Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote in his times as shepherd where it started, and complicated yet turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also brought to you by Sensei Swing Eric Diamond and his latest release, All of Me, featuring the title track, I've Got a Heartache, Bring Me Sunshine, Strike a Match, and more. Eric's a multi-award winning artist, inducted numerous Hall of Fames, album, Entertainer of the Year, and a new release to be coming soon. Check out the amazing Eric Diamond today, ericdiamondmusic.com. Also follow on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Check it out today. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show, themikewagnershow.com. 40 podcast platforms, heard in 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Follow us on all social media and platforms, Facebook, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and more. Also, check out the t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, Amazon.com. Be sure you check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift deals, get Amazon.com/Mia Molson Zia for great books, merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing author whose grandfather is a curator, renowned world authority on Native American art, Jack Maher, here on the Mike Wagner Show. We'll be talking about your grandfather, Eric Douglas. The book is called Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life. And first of all, how did the name Poppy ever come up?
It was just a family name. And, it's funny because I only knew him as this scary one-armed giant. And let me explain that. So Poppy passed away in 1956 after all of these amazing accomplishments that he did at the Denver Art Museum. And so I was just a 2-year-old. And at that point in his life, he had succumbed to a terrible bone cancer. And they had to take off one of his arms because the cancer had spread. And so when I would go over and visit him and my grandmother, that's what I remembered as this tall, scary, one-armed giant. But he just always been called Poppy. He actually had other names as well. It was funny because, the name sometimes went through different iterations. I, for example, couldn't say Poppy, so I called him Papa.
Papa, that's a good one.
Yeah, and then in World War II, he commanded a contingent of nurses in the South Pacific at a hospital, and they actually called him Pappy. So he had all these different names, but his real name was Eric Douglas, and he accomplished very much in a very short life. He died at the age of 56.
Wow, that is something. And of course, not only he did all that, he also revolutionized the way we view Native American art. And he's like a really fantastic guy. He made just about everything, pottery, textiles, paintings, drawings, anything you can imagine, even like making jewelry or Native American art, pendants, and all that. But yet his gift was simply befriending and championing a number of great artists as well.
Yeah, that is true. And let me just clarify one thing. He didn't really make these things, but he definitely made sure that the Native American creators who made them were identified and elevated and put into a museum. So, Mike, if I can explain just a little bit about the setting for this. In the early 1930s, there were a lot of racist attitudes about Native Americans and their art. A lot of that was formed by Hollywood. There was a lot of stereotyping going on. Well, Eric didn't have any of that in his blood. He grew up in a home west of Denver in a place called Evergreen. It's a beautiful mountain community. And his father and his mother loved Native American culture. And the reason that all came about was because his father was a priest, an Episcopal priest. And he very early on became sick. And he realized that one of the ways that he thought he could get better was to go out on horseback with a bedroll and sleep out under the stars in our Four Corners region here in Colorado. And the Four Corners, of course, is where Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona and Utah all come together. It's beautiful country, very stark, a lot of canyons, a lot of desert area. But anyway, he went down there to try to improve his health. He had some lung ailments and other things. And in the course of spending months in the backcountry, he came across Native Americans, including the Hopi. And the Hopi took him kind of into their family. And they helped him improve. He used a lot of their techniques to get better with his lung ailment. And in the course of this, he really fell in love with their culture and their art, so much so that the Hopi made him a blood brother. Well,
Nice.
this transmitted into, well, let's take a look at the art that these folks are making. And he brought a lot of it back to the home in Evergreen. And after, he had his son, Eric grew up surrounded by all this beauty, all this Native American beauty, baskets and leggings and pottery and jewelry. And this just fostered this same kind of love that his dad had for these different tribes. But one day, they were having sort of an outdoor picnic at this beautiful home in Evergreen called Camp Neosho. And they invited some neighbors to come over. And one of those neighbors who lived nearby in Evergreen was named Ann Evans. And she's significant because her father was Colorado Territorial Governor John Evans. And he was infamously associated with something called the Sand Creek Massacre. Horrible chapter in Western history when a lot of soldiers went and unprovoked wiped out this village, mostly women and children. Well, Anne, his daughter, I think felt tremendous guilt over what had happened and that his father had approved this attack. And so she, knowing of Eric's love for Native American art and their culture, asked him if he might help her start a museum in which a lot of this work could be preserved and collected, because she was very concerned, as were a lot of other people, that the things that the U.S. government was doing to Native Americans was going to wipe them out as a race. And so she wanted to try to make sure that their language, their art, their music was preserved before this happened. So she talked Eric into starting this, what was called the Indian Arts Department in Denver at the Denver Art Museum. And since they both had beautiful examples of this artwork, that's what the foundation of the collection was. It was these baskets and these leggings and this jewelry that I've referenced from the Eric Douglas family and also Ann Evans family. And they started to assemble this collection that eventually grew to become one of the premier collections of Native American art in the world today. But he took it a step further. My grandfather always used to say that the only people that really enjoyed museums were eggheads. And the reason for that was he felt a lot of this material was trapped under glass. That's what he called it. And so he innovated ways to take it out of the cabinets and from behind the glass and to put it out on pedestals and to put it in niches and to use painting and lighting techniques so that it was much easier for a museum visitor to access. And a lot of those techniques are in use today in 2025, not only at the Denver Art Museum, but in museums all over the world because of what Poppy did. And so a lot of that is explored in my book.
I was just going to ask, what year was that that he utilized pedestals, lighting, and everything? What year was that again?
We're talking about the 1930s.
1930s. Okay.
Yeah. And
I was trying to clear up what happened. I was trying to think that we thought it might have been recent, but I was like, 1930. He must have been ahead of his time. It was amazing.
He was way ahead of his time, and he had a collaborator. There was another man at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. His name was Rene de Harnecourt, and he was sort of thinking the same thing as my grandfather was. So sort of on parallel tracks, they were developing these techniques. In Rene's case, he would sketch out on a piece of paper what a visitor might see as they first enter a museum. What's to the right? What's to the left? What's several yards down? And then he would take that graph and then transmit it into an actual collection, the way he would build the cases, the heights of them, adding the lights, et cetera, et cetera. They teamed up on a beautiful exhibition in 1939 that celebrated the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was the
Nice.
1939 Golden Gate Exposition. And this is so fascinating, Mike, because it was built up into San Francisco Bay by the Army Corps of Engineers. They actually built an artificial island in the bay. You only could get to it by water taxi. And they built what was this World's Fair for the West Coast. People always hear about the New York World's Fair or the Chicago World's Fair. Not a lot of attention was paid to this, San Francisco World's Fair. But their whole role was to build an exhibit hall for Native American art and artifacts. And one of the things they did, using their creativity, was to bring in Native American artists to demonstrate how they made sand paintings, how they did weaving, how they did all of these beautiful things that were so unique to the Hopi, the Zuni, the Navajo. And people just came from all over to see this work. Here's a really cool example of just the innovation that these men did at this World's Fair in 1939. There was a mural at the entry, and they painted a Cheyenne war party on this mural. But rather than just make it flat up against the wall, they actually added real feathers onto the headdresses of these riders. And so it was a 3D mural, a part of it was. And then they brought up a compressed tube of air that was hidden from behind the wall that sprayed compressed air onto the feathers. So as you're looking at this mural of this war party, you're seeing the feathers ripple in the wind as if they're riding at you. Think about that, 1939. Innovative then, innovative today.
Oh my goodness. And I was thinking about it. I did a piece on Ultraviolet Giotto, back in the day on YouTube, and it was for Discovery Channel, and did the same thing, like, art restoration, violet light, everything like that. And that was used back in the day. And I'm surprised all the inventions were around 1930s and all that. But then when you mentioned something about Hollywood, having like this thing of Native Americans, do you think, were they jealous of the Native Americans, back then? Did they feel threatened and all that? So it's like I was thinking about, like with Hollywood, how they portray them. Do you think they might have been intimidated by the Native Americans back then?
I just know that if you look back, and there's a lot of really good work that was done by many directors, such as John Ford. I think he had his heart in the right place. But the majority of these Western films, the Native Americans were depicted as savages. And women in particular in these tribes were denigrated on film. And so I know that Eric, Renee, Ann Evans, people of that generation, they realized it was wrong, that it was not showing the reality of the beauty of these cultures and what the art that they were presenting was like. It wasn't just about, let's go set the wagon on fire and, start shooting arrows at Custer. And so they, I think, collectively were on this mission to break down those stereotypes. I don't think there was jealousy. I think there was just concern that it was being depicted in a very wrong way. And so to combat it, rather than, through film, they combated it through these exhibitions and through these galleries that showed their art.
Mm-hmm. And it also seems to me that Poppy really made some great friends. He knew how to win friends, influence people, and everything. How are some of the few friendships that he made as well, too? You can name some artists and some of the big impacts they've had.
One was a Hopi potter named Nampeo, and she lived in First Hano down in Hopi land. It's a beautiful settlement on top of a mesa. And if you can imagine ladders going up to sort of boxes, when you look at some of the artwork from the Southwest, that is sort of the type of settlement that this was. And so Eric would visit Nampeo and convince her to put her work in a museum. She didn't necessarily understand what a museum was, but she trusted him because he developed this friendship, this relationship with her. And he knew that she was one of these premier artists who needed to be shared with the world. And here's the reason why. When she would make something as simple as a seed pot, she would descend from her home atop the mesa down to the desert floor, and she would get this clay that was of this special color and quality so that it would form what she wanted in this seed jar. And in addition to that, she would find fragments from hundreds of years ago from her ancestors of pots that were broken and thrown over the side. And she would pick them up and look at the way that these patterns were drawn and the artwork was made so she could adapt them for a more modern audience. So she was keeping the voices of her ancestors alive in more modern pieces. So today, if you know anything about Indian art and pottery, you know that Nampeyo is really quality. And that's what Eric tried to do, what Poppy tried to do throughout his life, find the best of the best and showcase it at the Denver Art Museum and in other museums around the world.
And also, too, you also mentioned that Poppy was involved in, commanding a hospital. We talked about that earlier. And with the better mental health treatments, what was the type of mental health that was used back then compared to today?
Well, here's what happened. So he had orders, it was a top secret mission, believe it or not, to ship out over 100 nurses from Camp Carson, Colorado. It's now known as Fort Carson. It's an Army base, as it was back then. But they shipped out by rail to the West Coast and then took a transport ship to New Hebrides in the South Pacific. And they were to open this hospital. And as you can imagine, a lot of the injuries that were coming back from the front lines of the Pacific War for these sailors and these Marines were horrific physical injuries. But there were also injuries you could not see. Today, we would call it PTSD, but that name was not around back then. They called it shell shock.
I remember that. Yeah, they said like, oh, shell shock. They just brushed it off. Now it's like it was wrong to brush it off.
Absolutely. And so, you would see horrific things and be affected psychologically, traumatically. And Eric, because he grew up in this home, not only full of art, but also music, because his father, the Episcopalian priest I mentioned, was an expert in a special kind of music that was almost like Gregorian chant. It was called plain song, and it was used in churches of his time, and it's still to this day. Mm-hmm. But he grew up in this house full of plain song and classical music. Somehow, Eric figured out when he looked at these men coming back from the front lines with these psychological traumas, that perhaps music would work as therapy in helping them to recover what they had lost through battle. So he wrote back to his dad in Evergreen and said, "Dad, I've got an idea. I want to put together a choir of these convalescing guys with shell shock. And I want to see if music will help them," because he had played classical music on records to some of the patients and realized immediately that there was a response and it was working. People that, weren't communicating then started to communicate when they heard this beautiful music. It triggered something in them. So he got these scores sent from Colorado to New Hebrides, and he had these convalescing choirs. And he really, just like he was a pioneer in the museum field, he was the pioneer in the way that these traumatized service people were treated with their injuries, with their shell shock. And so I'm just so proud of all that he did. And again, just seemed like he was constantly trying to think of ways to make the world better.
Mm-hmm. And also without medicine and healthcare and everything like that. And I'm thinking about it. I thought, why aren't hospitals using classical music or even art, trying to heal the patients today? It's like, I'm kind of scratching my head over that one. It's like, why did music suddenly just fall off the face of the earth all of a sudden?
Well, I think in a lot of places it is actually used in tandem with other therapies. I'm not that familiar with how things are done now, but I do know back in his time, and specifically at this hospital, he received accolades for trying this, because up until that point, a lot of the time, if you came in with shell shock, they'd give you a couple of weeks of try to sleep it off, do whatever, and then they'd send you back to the front line. And I think Eric helped sort of change the thinking about that.
It certainly does as well, too. And of course, if there's some accomplishments about Poppy, you can talk about as well. I mean, he's had a really colorful life.
Well, I'll tell you what, after the war, he maintained his friendships with these nurses, and they had reunions for as long as he lived. It was funny, I mentioned that they called him Pappy. He called them his chicks. And this was again, think of the time, the 1940s. So it was Pappy and his chicks. And he had such a wonderful relationship with them. He was also a poet. He comprised a little booklet full of verses for every one of those 110 nurses, just a little line about them. And he published it and gave each one a copy just to tell them how much they all meant to him, how much their service meant to him. He continued to innovate. One of the things that was somewhat controversial by today's standards were what was called Indian style shows that he put on with the help of the Denver Art Museum. So when you go to a museum, you think of the obvious things in Native American art, such as pottery and jewelry and leggings, like we've talked about. But there are also textiles, beautiful buckskin dresses, for example. And the Denver Art Museum had this collection, because of him, dating back to the 1800s up until his time, which the 40s and the 50s. And he said, instead of putting these dresses on a mannequin, how about if we put them on live models so we can see how the material moves? And I'll put together a fashion show. We'll invite some of the, influencers of the 40s and 50s, I guess you would say, compared to what the influencers are of today. A lot of the ladies' clubs and things. And let's invite them to these style shows. Another way to break down the stereotype between white America and Native Americans. And let's show them that beauty is beauty, no matter where it comes from. And so he took a page from Vogue magazine and started narrating these Indian style shows as if it was a big fashion show in New York.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you, Mike, it was a hit, because he had something to say about each dress as it was, coming down the runway. He compared one, for example, if this was like the little black dress in this particular tribe, it was used for, special occasions, and you could accessorize with turquoise. And he would just go through the whole shtick. And the popularity of these shows went way beyond Colorado. He staged these shows hundreds of times before he passed away, out in Hollywood, in Arizona, in New York, in Chicago. I mean, he was all over the place. And, one of my goals in telling this story and writing this book was hopefully to gain access to what I was told was some films were made of some of these Indian style shows with Eric as the narrator. And I understand there is a short clip that's out there somewhere, and I'm still looking for it. And one of these days, I hope to track it down. I wasn't able to before I published this book, but one of these days, I want to see what one of these things look like. Right now, all we have are Kodachromes, full color Kodachromes. Why were they controversial? Because all the models were white. And he did consider using Native American models, but honestly, he didn't get a lot of response when he would ask some of the tribes if they might be willing to be part of this. And again, as part of his effort to break down the stereotype, he said, okay, well, if we have white models showing Native American dresses, that will maybe increase the comfort level of the people that are viewing it, and maybe at the same time help these Native American creators, because these women would then buy these designs, which were being adapted even in the 40s and 50s by Native American creators. They were updating classic Native American styles for a new generation. It also went beyond that. There were these big time fashion designers in New York that caught some of these shows. And if you look back into our pop culture, you will start to see a lot of these Native American influences starting to show up in women's fashion in the 40s and 50s. And a lot of it was because of what Poppy did through these shows.
I was just thinking about that with the Native American models. What was their resistance on that? Did they fear they were stereotyped, or was there
I
fear
think it
or
was just
something?
a general fear of engaging with white culture. And that was what Eric was trying to sort of do as the intermediator by going to where they lived and talking to them and convincing people like Nampeo, this needs to be in a museum, because at that time, again, there wasn't a lot of understanding of what a museum was really all about, let alone a fashion show. And so he was trying to meet people where they were at. And he just found these cultural intersection points where he could, showcase the material in a way that hopefully was beneficial to both sides, because that was also part of his mission, was to really try to create a livelihood for these talented designers and potters and artists. It worked. A lot of the stuff ended up, being acquired, and the people that bought them for their beauty and put them in their homes. And I think to this day, even a lot of Native American artists who are flourishing can probably thank Eric for opening that door.
And certainly indeed. And just another thing that came to mind, what was the biggest challenge that Eric faced when it comes to, like, he did hospitals, he did art, he did all these things. What was the biggest challenging project for him, and how did he manage to accomplish?
I guess if I was to look back on his life, it was probably the innovation that he wanted to do, because there were times in the history of the Denver Art Museum when he came up against resistance, because they knew, this one way of showcasing art, and then the ideas that he would bring in, they required funding levels that maybe the museum didn't quite have to add the kind of lighting and the kinds of things he wanted to do. And also, it just was so different. I think anybody that tries to break the mold in any discipline, in any industry, is going to find that to be the case. I think, you and I, in our media backgrounds, have seen the same thing. There was a lot of resistance in my own career when digital started coming online, and as I've kind of indicated before we started our recording, that a lot of photographers who really like the high-end stuff and the big lighting kits and the top level sound, they were really having difficulty adjusting to a world where you could just shoot it with a cell phone. And
Right.
I think,
Just I see people do it like this, and then you got your clip.
right. And so I think the same thing, the people in charge of the art museum at different points during Eric's career just didn't quite to understand what he was doing. So if there was frustration, it was probably in trying to move the needle in innovation. I don't get the sense that he was too frustrated beyond that. He seemed very happy in the work that he did, and he felt he was helping improve the lives of these Native American creators.
And what else can you learn more about Poppy? We'll find out in a minute with author Jack Maher of Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of The Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Me, Molson and Missing. Also, Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David the Queen 3. Exquisite Pains, King David Psalms. Check out the Sweet Psalmist on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. And the Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with all of me, ericdiamondmusic.com. Check it out today. We'll be back with author Jack Maher of Poppy after this time. We're back with author Jack Maher of Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life here on the Mike Wagner Show. Very colorful indeed, about his grandfather, Eric Douglas, being Poppy. And what else can people learn more about Poppy?
Well, if they want to go to my website, which is kind of a mouthful, Mike, I apologize in advance.
It's okay.
It's sandgoatmanorpublishing.com. And there I have some multimedia that I have done, because this beautiful home that he lived in with his mom and dad and later wife and children, it was called Camp Neo Show for many, many years. Today, it is known as the Haiwan Heritage Park. But I have a story on there that I did about this beautiful home where they all grew up. And today, school groups from all over Colorado go on field trips to learn not only about Poppy and the Douglas family, but also about Colorado pioneer life. It's a wonderful opportunity for these kids because they incorporate a unique math lesson, and I'll tell you what that is. So they have a covered wagon, and then they have supplies near that covered wagon. And the kids have to figure out, okay, how much can I fit into the wagon? How much is it going to weigh? How far can the animals go with this fully covered, loaded covered wagon? And they just, to a boy and girl, absolutely love going to this Haiwan Heritage Park. And I don't know how many of your listeners or viewers ever get to Colorado, but if they ever do, I encourage them to go to Evergreen, to visit the Haiwan Heritage Park, to tour my family's home, which is now a museum, and you will feel their presence there, not in a ghostly way, but in a loving way. And there's so much more to this family, and I don't know how much you want to get into this, but really, we could spend hours talking about everything that the Douglas family as a family accomplished and all the different facets that they use their energy and their creativity. It's really quite remarkable.
And we want everybody to check it out there, Spirit Fills and everything like that. It's really amazing. We're here with author Jack Maher here on the Mike Wagner Show with Poppy about colorful Colorado life. What else can we expect in 2025 and beyond?
Well, I am working on a memoir right now, and it's a very personal thing for me because it's about my late wife, Becky, and a remarkable experience she had in the parking lot of a church almost 6 years ago now. And for me, it was a true revelation of divinity. And I don't want to get too much more into it than that, other than to tell you it was remarkable. It changed my life, and it has set me on a spiritual journey that has included a pilgrimage to the Holy Land and a pilgrimage to Marian apparition sites. I'm Catholic, and Mary is a very big deal in our faith. And I have many, many remarkable things that have happened since this incident 6 years ago. And so that's what the memoir is all about. And I should be finished here within the month and hopefully get out there with this book.
That would be so great. And if you came back and talk more about, we'd love to have it. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
Well, again, I think I've named a lot of them, but I'd like to probably go back to that high school classroom and that journalism class and the reporter who came up to talk to us. His name was Ron Mitchell. And Ron was probably the best writer in terms of TV news that I've ever encountered. And I've tried to model a lot of my writing on Ron. And let me tell you, Mike, it was so surreal because, as you mentioned at the top, I became executive producer. So I was this man's supervisor. I was charged with clearing his scripts for air and checking them. And I told him, I said, Ron, I'm not worthy to give you a green check mark on your script. I mean, for heaven's sake, I was a high school kid. You're the reason I'm in this newsroom. And he was so humbled, and he said, no, you're the executive producer, and you need to check this script, and you need to be honest if I need to change something. And he taught me so much in terms of how to approach material and to write well and to be humble. And I would say Ron is someone that continues to influence me, even though he has since passed away.
That's certainly amazing. Going back to what my journalism teacher said, if your mother says I love you, make sure you verify.
That's it. That's exactly right.
That's right. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
You know, I would just say to keep your eyes open to possibility and keep your heart open. Sometimes life is going to surprise you in ways that will delight, but also in ways that will do the opposite. But you just have to have a heart that has a big enough capacity for all of it and to learn from the things that happen that are both good and bad, and just to try to be humble about how you approach it.
And I think that's excellent point, everyone, to keep in mind as well. We're with the amazing author Jack Maher of Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life in honor of his grandfather, Eric Douglas, and Mike Wagner Show. Jack, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to him soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. And what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Yeah, if you will just Google my name, and again, it's Jack Maher, Maher, and the word Poppy. You will find all kinds of links out there, including Amazon, where the book is available, and also on my website, which I've mentioned, sandgoatmanorpublishing.com. There's also a photo gallery there, Mike, that shows you a lot of the people that populate my book, including my grandfather, but a lot of other people. And I think it's an interesting place to spend some time in. So I encourage your viewers and listeners to do that. And if they want to drop me a line, I'd love to hear from them and write them back.
Certainly do that as well in an old journalistic way, too. Pen and paper is always the best. So.
Absolutely.
You got it. Again, Jack, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having you soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. We wish you all best. And Jack, you definitely have a great future ahead.
Thank you, Mike.